Hey everybody, it's Jorik. Welcome back. I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. Apologize a little bit. My voice is off. I'm not feeling the greatest, so a little sore throat here. But I wanted to get a video out because as people are moving to Portugal and people are reaching out for consultations for me to preview property and give assessments and inspect them, one thing that people have asked, why did you buy? And should we be buying property or renting property? And I wanted to give you 5 reasons why I think renting is a better idea than buying. Now, I'm going to be a little hypocritical here, but I'm going to take the other side of things because we have purchased our property. We financed it. We didn't buy it outright. But I wanted to let people know that I think by Idealista and a lot of the real estate companies, like over 93% of the people that move to Portugal are renting over buying. So there's not many of us that make the decision to buy. And so I want to focus on renting and why it may make sense for you, at least to start out, to rent and then maybe make a purchase down the road. So let's get after it here. The first reason why renting might be better than buying is, let's say you don't get along with your neighbors. If you're renting, maybe there's some issues that you've had with your landlord. I'll throw the landlord in or property management company in as a neighbor, so to speak. But maybe for some reason in the building or in the community that you live, you just you picked a spot that maybe didn't make sense. It looked good when you got there, but then once you got into it, um, there's just been issues like noise concerns or things, even when you may have called authorities to, if there was a party in your building or consistent issues with noise or people, that it just, for whatever reason, it didn't work out, or with your landlord, let's say unresponsive property management company too, that when you had things that they needed to address, they weren't addressing, they weren't responding to you, or it was more of an antagonistic relationship than it was helping each other type of relationship. So that's the first thing I think says, if you want to get out of something, again, you wait for the time that you can give notice, leave the contract, and move on. Whereas if you're buying and then you have that same situation where you don't like your neighbors or something like that, it's not as easy to do that. Thankfully for us, we love our neighbors and hopefully they love us. The second reason is, I'll say, a more practical one. You moved to Portugal, it didn't work out. And for whatever reason or reasons you may have of why you are leaving Portugal, so let's say that's after a year or 2 or 3, depending on when your lease would run out or when you would have the ability to break that. Usually it's 1/3 of the time into that lease contract, you're able to do that. It just wasn't what you had drawn it up, or it just wasn't going in the direction you wanted it to be. So I'll leave that very open ended, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. A lot easier because you have an end date and you can get out of that lease. Whereas buying, yes, you may have maybe equity in a property, but it may take you much longer to sell that property, and you may need the money from that sale to fund another property in your home country or wherever else you're going. So number two, if it just doesn't work out, being able to leave, it's just more accessible and easier if you're renting as opposed to buying. Number three, say similar to number one, but repairs are not getting done. So this is specific, and this is what prompted me to make this video because when I say several, 7, 8 people, probably in the last 3 or 4 months, have reached out specifically about repairs and issues and things like that. Part of that I made into a contract video, and they were at fault for not reading their contract. But provided your contract states that if it's not damage that you incurred, it's just the oven goes out or things like that, that the landlord should be responsible. The landlord's not addressing it, and or if there is a management association that handles the common areas. someone, the elevator, so they rented an apartment and the elevator didn't work the whole time. So they got out of their lease. They signed a 3-year lease. They got out of it after a year, uh, and primarily because they were expecting. I think they were on the fourth floor. They said, so they felt okay. They can go up and down, but the ability to have the elevator was one of the reasons that they wanted to be in that place. So it just didn't work. So it's not that's not necessarily the landlord's fault, but the building, whoever is managing that, should have taken care of that. But the landlord should have been on the that management company to get after it. It just didn't happen, and that's an extreme example. But there are several examples where just if it's taking months to take care of things. One lady last year had said, and sorry, I mean 2022 going into 2023, said that her heat unit stopped working in mid-December, and it was very cold. She was in Braga, and it didn't get fixed until April. And then she said by April I was okay, but she bought more blankets and just wore sweatshirts and stuff around her place. But it didn't get addressed in a timely fashion. So it's a long-winded way to answer number three. But if repairs and things to the either the building or the apartment are not getting done, that's a lot easier to get out of than if you own the place and let's say the elevator's not working or whatnot. Then you're responsible for trying to force the change and the repairs, getting people to fix things. And again, if you wanted to get out of the place, selling it and moving to someplace else isn't as isn't as easy. Number four, you want to move to a different part of the area that you're in. So let's say you're moving from one side of Lisbon to the other. You live in the Alfalma and you're going to move to, let's say, Belém. Porto, you're going to move from one part of Porto or the Algarve, one part of the Algarve, the eastern Algarve to western. Even in a rural area, you're in Avis and you're moving from just a few blocks over in a different neighborhood. Those are things that are common, and the majority of the people that we've met over our 4+ years here now have moved every year or two someplace else. They've stayed in the same vicinity, the same city or the same rural area. They've just gone to another place. Maybe it's because they got a better deal. The rent at their current location was getting really high and jacked up by the property owner. Um, but you wanted to stay in the same place, but you just want to maybe just one neighborhood over, or you find yourself going to a different part of the town or city or village, or let's say in the Algarve, you find yourself going from one end to the other for trips because although you live in the eastern Algarve, you find yourself going to the western Algarve for either beaches or whatever. Then you decide to make the move there. Um, the next one, number five, is you're making a move to a different part of Portugal altogether. Now, one could argue moving from one side of the Algarve to another. That's a big stretch, so I will give that to you. But I'm thinking more of Porto to the Algarve, Lisbon to Porto. You're moving from the country into the city and vice versa. You want to be able to have the flexibility because let's say you move to Portugal and Porto and Lisbon, you have a little more weather. And what I mean by that, cloudy days, rainy days, not as sunny. The Algarve, more sun, less rain. As you've lived here, maybe people in Porto, one gentleman I corresponded with, it was like 3 weeks of rain, and at some point he was going, lived in a lot of this, but the Algarve's looking really nice to us, maybe down the road as a place to live, maybe down the road to buy or to rent. And a number of people have commented that live here in Lisbon, where we live, and they've talked about making a move maybe to the Algarve. It seems like more people that I've communicated with or that I've met through the channel when they're looking to move and they're in a rental situation, it seems like moving farther south. They may start north and then every couple of years they're following the road to more sunshine, if you will. And we've thought about that as well because as much as we live in Lisbon, we love it because of the accessibility, the diversity of food here, the culture, the airport that gets to the most amount of destinations. We also find ourselves when we go to the Algarve, we feel really good about going, like we're excited to go. We're really relaxed when we're there, and we miss it when we leave. So we've talked about, although we own, we don't have the ability to get another property or really rent. We'd have to sell this, but maybe we would sell this and either rent or buy something down there down the road. We'll see. Um, but if you want to move and be a nomad around the country and get a different flavor, renting is really the way to go. Yes, there's unknowns, but there's unknowns with buying a property. But I think that if you are concerned, or sorry, if you're considering Portugal as a place to live, and even if you've scouted out the place and you know you want to live in this particular area, maybe worth just renting. Um, there's always going to be property for sale, whether it be apartments or homes or farms, plots of land, commercial property that you'll be able to get into. And yes, the price may go up, but the price may go down or stabilize. But renting is really a good way to get a feel for what life is like in a particular area for at least a year. And if you don't like that neighborhood or area or town, you go move someplace else and get a different feel and a different flavor for Portugal. So, again, wanted to give you 5 reasons why I think renting makes more sense to many and most as opposed to buying. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video and enjoy your travels.